All right, here I'm bringing the new pressure washer that I just bought to test out the Ryobi electric 2300 PSI that I'm very excited about, seeing if it has enough pressure to actually clean the deck. As you can see, we have quite a few leaves on the deck, plus a lot of mildew towards the house side. What I have right there on the dolly is the Ryobi pressure washer, an extension cord. It says I didn't know how long the actual cord was on the pressure washer, and the Mold Armor detergent to put into the pressure washer. Here I have my two tools to actually clean the leaves off. Started with the gas blower because I had a little bit more gas in it and I just wanted to do it quickly. And as you can see, I have a push broom, which is better for kind of in between the deck boards, which we'll get to further. And I had to, one of the last things that I had to remove off the deck was the umbrella and that base, which is weighted with sand. Each one of those 4 base parts are about 50 pounds. All right, here I am cranking up my gas blower. Another reason why I was so excited about an electric pressure washer. Do not have to crank it with the hand because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But the gas blower obviously works very quickly in removing leaves from your deck. We have trees all around our house, so this is a continual process. And you really do want to try to keep the leaves off of your deck because the longer they stay on there, the more mold and mildew you will get, or just staining on the deck. This is most of the mildew that you see on the deck probably accumulated in the last 3 or 4 months. So we have most of the leaves gone. A couple of the areas that you can see on the video is actually where it was really wet and the gas blower was not picking up, particularly that area right there was very wet. So the leaves were really kind of stuck on. So the push broom has really stiff bristles, which kind of help get some of the other stuck on leaves when they're wet. But at this particular point, I realized I have got a lot of debris in the middle of the deck boards. So I'm going to get my paint scraper. Here I am coming back. I have a 5-in-1 paint scraper, and this is probably one that I've had for a very long time, and it is very well used. There's a couple of different ends. There's a pointy end, and then there's a flat end. Either one should work for scraping inside to get the debris out. What usually happens is it's not just the leaves. There's like little sticks and acorns. If you have squirrels, the acorns love to sit on the deck and eat their acorns, which leaves little bits of the acorn, and inevitably they get in between the deck boards. So they get stuck there, and then there's debris that collects on top of it, and then it's really stuck. And if you try to blow it, it'll just stay there, or even if you try to brush it with the deck brush, it will not move it because it is really stuck. And you can see a couple of times I actually have to put a little bit of pressure to get all of the debris out. When I built this deck, this was probably my 4th or 5th deck that I've built. And I've learned over the years, especially living in Florida, very humid, very much trees everywhere, that you need more of a gap in between your deck boards to allow debris to either go through or you can get out quickly. In my previous ones, I would use the pressure treated wood. They would always say butt it up, and then when it dries, it'll shrink. But I noticed that when it would dry, it would only shrink to 1/8 of an inch. So this deck, I have about a 1/4 inch gap between each decking board, which has allowed either water to go through pretty swiftly or, like I said, a lot of debris just to pass through. And it's a lot easier to clean in between the deck boards. When you have debris stuck with a smaller gap, you have to pry pretty hard to get it out. So as you can see, and I know it's a little far away, so I apologize for the still video, but the leaves that I push broomed earlier in that one spot, now is all of it is able to be lifted off the deck along with all the in-between. And hopefully we'll keep some of the parts. And again, I know you can't see really closely into that, but I really wanted to make sure all of that, because here's what happens. If you leave debris that's really packed together, basically the places that is getting stuck is right over the joist. So you can see like every 16 inches along the deck board is where I'm having to scrape that out. If you leave debris on top of the joist rots faster, which means your deck deteriorates faster, and the joist is your framing. So obviously, yes, we want the deck boards to be clean, free of mold and mildew, but you also want to make sure that you get all the little stuff off the top of the joist as well, because that's your framing and that's a very important part of your deck. And here now you see how I'm able to sweep, and literally anything that was stuck is actually gone, and I can clear it out with the deck broom has a really stiff bristle, which really gets in between well. Okay, so now I'm scraping. The way I built my deck is I have actually 4 different platforms, and there's a board that is in between the 2 different platforms, and I'm scraping that right now. When I built this, I made sure that I left a pretty good gap on each end in between that board, so that I knew, again, that I would have to be cleaning it out. Sometimes the pressure washer may get some of that out, but sometimes it doesn't. And so I figured that I would spend about an hour just to make sure anything that was really packed in that I got mostly out, and anything that was loose, the pressure washer would get the rest of it. And I believe that's the last bit of that. And now here is the unboxing. So as you can see in the picture, we have the Ryobi pressure washer, which I'm actually opening with my 5-in-1 tool because there's multiple things you can do with it. We have the mold armor that is specifically to be used. It's a wooden deck that's specifically for pressure washers, and so it's less corrosive on your machine. If you go to the store or wherever you buy it, make sure it is for pressure washers, because there are different ones. All right, here you go. There's the shot for you. 2300 psi, 1.2 gallons per minute with the induction brushless motor. Here's the top handle. Lots of cardboard packing, which is great, but it is pretty heavy. You'll need to remove a lot of the side cardboard pieces so that you can actually pull out the motor, which is quite heavy. That's the trigger handle. That's the wand that you put your nozzle tips on. And that's the extension cord that's obviously attached. And I'm trying to figure out how to actually lift it up. And there it is. Again, it's pretty heavy, so just be careful. If you need another person to help you, it might help. That was pretty much it out of the actual box, though. Then there was the instructions. It also held all the different spray nozzle tips and the actual hose. And you can see my bulldog Maddie helping. Okay, so the first thing is removing this cardboard. It's just wrapped around the back legs. Because it was pretty tight, but came off pretty easily. The instructions were really straightforward as well, as far as how to connect everything. So this is the first time I've ever used a larger electric power washer, pressure washer. And this Ryobi felt very similar to the Ryobi gas pressure washer that I had borrowed from my friend. About the same size, same weight, everything. Obviously, I didn't help them when they put it together, so I don't know how different it is as far as putting it together, but the hose was the same thickness, and the spray nozzles were all fairly similar. Literally, the only difference was there's a cord attached rather than having to put in gas. but everything else was very similar. The wand and the hose was exactly the same as the Ryobi gas pressure washer. Right now, I'm just reading the instructions just to verify that I am putting this properly together. So the top handle slips right on with those quick attachments. It just kind of pops in, which is great. You know exactly when it's in, when it pops on. And then basically you're putting together your wand. And again, there's only one way to put it together, so it just screws right in the one side. You do want to make sure that you have a tight fit on that so that you don't have any water leaking out of that. Now on each of these, they have like little plastic caps that are on top of the threads, and that's just to protect them during shipping. You just simply take those off. And the next step is to attach the hose to the spray gun and then to the machine. And again, pretty self-explanatory because you'll see on the machine where this hose is connected compared to the actual water hose that you'll actually connect as well. And as with anything, when you're first starting getting the threads on right, just make sure you have them going in the right directions before you full on put it in and then you strip the threads somehow. That's what I was making sure of and being careful with, was just verifying that I had the threads threaded correctly. Sorry. So now we have the spray nozzle gun connected. The next step is to connect the water hose. Depending on how you're using the pressure washer, you could probably use a hose that isn't as long. We have I think it's a 50-foot hose right now, and that's so that before I put in the irrigation to reach the back part of our backyard. And you'll see a lot of it in the following video. But if you're close to the house, you can obviously use a smaller hose, since the gun nozzle hose is, I think, 25 feet. Okay, so now I'm attaching the water hose, and it's on the same size of the other hose, but again, it's clearly labeled for the different hoses. So you can't mix that up. And again, you want it fairly tight. Not too tight, but definitely tight enough that you just don't have water spraying everywhere. So now the extension cord, and it's GFI protected, which is great, obviously, because you're going to be around water. And hopefully you have a GFI outlet to plug it in since it's outside. All right. Again, just because I didn't know how long I would need to go where I'm plugging it into my extension cord. You really didn't need it. Between the extension cord and the length of the nozzle hose, it covered everything that I needed on my deck. At this point, we're going to put the mold armor into the pressure washer's tank. And the great thing that I like about this is based on what you're using, the wash hose, the blue nozzle, or the orange, which is the pressure nozzle, it automatically adjusts the amount of solution versus water. I believe the tank holds a full gallon, but since I'd never used the mold armor before, I didn't put the whole gallon in. So right now I'm attaching the blue nozzle, which is what you kind of flood the deck with the solution to be able to help get some of the toughest mold and mildew off. So we're going to turn the water on, which you always want to have water flowing to a pressure washer, regardless of gas, electric, because you don't want to burn up the motor. Okay, here's the moment of truth. So you can tell right now, I put a little bit of the concentrate on, which is the white foamy stuff coming out, and immediately you see the dark mold and mildew coming off. And this was without any soaking of the mold armor or anything. So we've got good pressure, which again I wasn't sure how much pressure I was actually going to get with this machine. And 1 minute in, and it's really good pressure. So you can see a better shot of the mold and mildew from those, from the base of the umbrella. And you have to be careful with those. We love our umbrella, but that is one thing that I'm not happy about. Even before we painted the deck, there was a lot of mold and mildew on the regular pressure treated boards as well. Okay, so we are pressure washing. And one of the reasons why I love using a pressure washer is the immediate gratification of clean deck boards. So I really like the pressure washer. The 2300 to 2500 is the most pressure that you really need for most of your homeowner activity, such as deck, fencing, siding, any of that. And it was very easy. The push button start was absolutely wonderful, because previously with gas models that hadn't been serviced, you would crank it 10 to 20 times and maybe it would start. And half the time that you're actually trying to pressure wash, half of that time with a gas model is spent on just cranking the machine and keeping it running. So for that, the model, I probably spent about a full hour, hour and a half pressure washing, and it never shut off. I shut it off a couple times to do other things, came right back, went right back on. It was absolutely the easiest to use, and I would highly recommend it. And the price point was really pretty good too, compared to some of the larger gas models, which can be well over $300 to $400. As far as the sound, it was definitely quieter than a gas model. The gas models, you can't even have a conversation, but I was actually able to, at a certain decibel level, still hear exactly what I was being asked from my videographer. So again, I was very happy with the Ryobi 2300 electric pressure washer with the brushless motor. I believe that it's definitely a good buy for most all homeowners.